Search for the Leader Coronavirus Daily on any podcast provider to hear more from the podcast.
We have tested almost 40,000 people for COVID-19 in the past 17 days and none have tested positive. We have had no one in hospital for COVID-19 for 12 days. It's been 40 days since the last case of community transmission, 22 days since that person finished their self-isolation.
New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern announcing the apparent eradication of COVID-19 in the country and the almost complete lifting of lockdown restrictions. It follows a woman in her 50s in Auckland recovering from the infection. It has not come easy. New Zealand's restrictions were amongst some of the tightest in the world. 22 people died, but for now, it's over.
And so today, I can announce that Cabinet has agreed we will now move to level 1. To get our economy fully open again, and we will start almost immediately. We move down to COVID-19 alert level 1 from midnight tonight.
How did they do that? Well, Amelia Wade, a political journalist at the New Zealand Herald, was at the press conference where the news was announced. She joins me now. Amelia, New Zealand had its first case 101 days ago. And now the country's virus-free.
Virus-free as of today for the first time, as you say, in just over 100 days. So it's been really good news. Our Prime Minister said she sort of had a little dance with her young daughter in the lounge while sort of intense but very good-natured health chief said he allowed himself a broad smile. And I know where I work in the press gallery in Parliament, you could hear the whoops up and down the hall. So it was definitely something to celebrate today for sure.
There aren't many countries, there's a few, but not many who can say that they are COVID-19 free right now. What has worked in New Zealand?
Well, sort of we've had about 75 days now of some sort of restriction. On the 23rd of March, actually, our Prime Minister announced that we'll be going into alert level 3, which was quite restrictive. And then in 48 hours, we're going into the 4-week lockdown. So that was some of the toughest restrictions in the world. So only essential services were open. We could only go to the supermarket or basically to the doctor or the hospital or to go get a test. And that ended up being just over 4 weeks. So that was a really sort of tough time. We all had to do social distancing. We had some very intense testing. And like you couldn't even get a takeaway. So it was really tough. And we all sort of look forward to our sort of daily government mandated walks outside. So that really worked for us. And then we sort of have slowly moved down the alert levels. So we've now had 4 weeks at this quasi-normal alert level 2. We've, been able to somewhat go about our normal lives. There are still quite strict measures in place for hospitality. So we have to enforce social distancing. You can have one server and that sort of thing. And so we've only had about 4 weeks of that. And that's really been able to help the government and our health officials sort of narrow down exactly where the cases are and make sure that everyone is isolated. And luckily, we haven't really seen a second wave that they were expecting. So I think that lockdown's really worked for us.
It was really, really tough, though, by your own account there. Did the country in general kind of toe the line on it, or was there resistance?
Well, no. I mean, the government was almost under pressure to go into lockdown. So people were calling to close our borders before the government actually closed them. We sort of had the benefit of being a little bit behind some of the rest of the world with their outbreaks. So we could already see what had happened in Wuhan, what had happened in Italy. So everyone was really aware of how dangerous this virus is. And so everyone was really on board. And in fact, one of the polls that one of the news stations here ran showed that 90% of the country supported lockdown. So it was broadly accepted. We also got into a bit of a narking culture where sort of people were curting twitching, and the police even had to set up a report line so that people could report if they thought that their neighbour wasn't enforcing it. And then when we moved to alert level 2, you could have gatherings of 10 people, and people were out there sort of counting with their fingers of saying, I'm pretty sure my neighbour's got 11 people next door. So everyone really toed the line and was really, really sort of responsible towards those measures, which again really helped. And the Prime Minister today thanked everyone for their efforts because it really was a mammoth task.
So you're moving to level 1 now. Does that mean that everything's just back to normal now?
Pretty much. I mean, it's life as normal as it possibly can be amid a global pandemic. So we've got 2 rugby matches, which will have real life spectators this weekend, which everyone's really looking forward to. We can, go out, we can sort of mingle, we can, have weddings and funerals, we can have all of life resumes. We don't have to line up outside the supermarket anymore. It's all back to normal, except we have an extremely strict border measures in place. So anyone coming into the country goes into isolation for 14 days at a government mandated facility. They are held there, and previously they haven't all been tested. They were only tested if they've got symptoms, but today the Ministry of Health announced that everyone coming into the country will be tested twice. So they'll be tested upon arrival and then tested again, because that's really where we're going to get our active cases now. So it's really important that we keep that restriction in place. Although, interestingly, there is a lot of talk and a lot of desire to open up our borders with Australia and some of the Pacific Islands as well. So yeah, it's life is normal, but with border restrictions. And hopefully, I think everyone's hoping, if we get any new cases, they will all be in quarantine and isolation at the border. And when they're recovered, they can go about our lovely lives in our New Zealand bubble.
Because your Prime Minister did say that she does expect there will be some new cases coming up, but that doesn't mean it's a failure.
No, it doesn't. It means, they are quite hesitant to say COVID-free because I don't think they want to put sort of false hopes in case there are some asymptomatic people and we get a few flare-ups here and there. But I think broadly what the hope is all of our new cases will be the people, New Zealanders coming back into the country. They have COVID-19, but they are managed at the borders. And then, so our general public is, COVID-19 free. Because one of the things we said from the start is the worst thing we could do for our economy is to go back up alert levels. So we don't want to go back to alert level 2. We want to stay at alert level 1. So it's sort of keeping it out as much as possible and quickly isolating it and anyone who's tested positive.
Part of the way that New Zealand's apparently going to be keeping track of things is through things called digital diaries. Can you tell me what those are and how do they help?
So our government, Ministry of Health launched a NZ COVID Tracer app. So there's been more than 500,000 downloads at the moment. You go up to a business and they have a QR code and you scan in and you have your brunch or whatever, and then that keeps a track of exactly where you've been, so that if you do test positive, you can then go back and see where you've been and then alert it that way. It's not Bluetooth enabled, so we're not it doesn't come into contact with anyone. It can't tell you if you're registered with someone else. That's something that the government's still working on. But it's literally just a digital means to keep a diary of where you've been so that you can retrace your steps easily.
And the final question, Amelia, is what are you going to do now?
Me personally, I think I'm going to have to go out for a few dinners. Maybe this weekend there'll be some celebrating. I'm looking forward to going to see, some comedy, some live performances and that sort of thing. That will be very good. It wasn't smooth sailing. It has truly been a really big sacrifice for every New Zealander. And, Jacinda Ardern keeps saying our team of 5 million have had to give up a lot in order to get us to this point. But now that we're here, everyone's certainly celebrating, that's for sure.
Search for the Leader Coronavirus Daily on any podcast provider to hear more from the podcast.